Latin jazz? You know, it's more than music. It's movement, it's migration, it's the beat of drums meeting the voice of a horn, the fire of Africa meeting the soul of the Americas. It's a story born not in one place but in the crossing of borders. And like all great stories, it starts with people. In the early 20th century, the world was changing fast. Jazz was exploding in the United States, from the streets of New Orleans to the clubs of Harlem. Meanwhile, in the Caribbean and Latin America, music pulsed with its own life. Son, danzan, rumba, mambo, samba. Each with centuries of African, indigenous, and European roots. By the 1940s, these worlds began to collide, especially in New York City. It was a cultural boiling pot. Cuban and Puerto Rican musicians were arriving in waves, joining an already thriving jazz scene. They brought congas, bongos, timbales, maracas, instruments that spoke through rhythm, not melody. And suddenly, something new began to form: Latin jazz. One of the first to see the possibilities was Mario Bauzá, a classically trained Cuban trumpeter. He played with American big bands, but he dreamed of something different: jazz with Afro-Cuban rhythm. In 1943, with the band Machito and the Afro-Cubans, Bauzá wrote a groundbreaking piece called Tanga. It was the first full Latin jazz composition, a bold blend of jazz improvisation and Afro-Cuban rhythm patterns. It was alive, dynamic, revolutionary. This wasn't just jazz with congas. This was a whole new sound. It marked the birth of Latin jazz as a genre. Around the same time, Dizzy Gillespie, one of bebop's founding fathers, met a Cuban percussionist named Chano Pozo. Gillespie was already a jazz innovator, always looking for something new. Pozo brought African-based rhythms, Santeria chants, and a deep percussive power. Their collaboration gave us tracks like Manteca and Tintindeo, music that shook the jazz world. Literally, it was big band meets bata drum, swing meets spirituality, and it blew audiences away. The 1950s and 60s were a golden age, you know. Latin jazz took over clubs, stages, and dance floors everywhere. It wasn't just background music, it was center stage. Tito Puente, known as El Rey del Timbal, was perhaps the most iconic figure. Born in Spanish Harlem, Puente's music combined Puerto Rican roots with American jazz flair. He brought the timbales front and center. Explosive, joyful, impossible to ignore. His charisma, talent, and showmanship made him a star not only in Latin communities, but around the world. And he wasn't alone. Mongo Santamaria, a master of Afro-Cuban percussion, gave the world Afro Blue, the first jazz standard written in a 6/8 African rhythm. Cal Tjader, a white American vibraphonist, embraced Latin music so deeply that honestly, many thought he was born in Havana. Chico O'Farrell, a Cuban composer and arranger, brought jazz structure to the wildness of Afro-Cuban music. Each artist expanded the boundaries of what Latin jazz could be. But while Afro-Cuban jazz took hold in the United States, something else was happening further south, in Brazil. In the late 1950s, a new genre emerged, one that combined samba rhythms with cool jazz harmonies, bossa nova. It was quiet, intimate, almost whispered, but it carried the same depth and complexity of its louder cousins. Artists like João Gilberto, Antonio Carlos Jobim, and Vinicius de Moraes crafted songs that honestly just felt like gentle waves. Desafinado Corcovado, The Girl from Ipanema. These weren't just songs, they were atmospheres. When Stan Getz, an American saxophonist, brought bossa nova to the United States, the whole world, you know, just fell in love. Suddenly Latin jazz had a new voice, soft and poetic, but no less powerful. From the 1970s onward, Latin jazz evolved once again. It fused with funk, rock, and soul. It entered the world of fusion jazz, experimental, electric, bold. Cuban trumpeter Arturo Sandoval, a student of Dizzy Gillespie and master of classical and jazz techniques, amazed audiences with his virtuosity. Paquito de Rivera, another Cuban, blended jazz with classical music, Caribbean dance, and tango. Michel Camilo, from the Dominican Republic, tore up the piano with incredible energy and passion. And Poncho Sanchez, a percussionist from Texas with Mexican roots, kept the groove alive, infusing his music with soul, blues, and Latin fire. In more recent years, artists like Esperanza Spalding, Edmar Castaneda, and Linda Briceno have brought fresh voices to Latin jazz. They explore gender, identity, and politics through rhythm. They mix genres, hip-hop, funk, pop, classical, proving that Latin jazz is still growing, still adapting. Latin jazz today is not a museum piece. It's a living, breathing movement. So what makes Latin jazz so powerful? It's the clave, the heartbeat behind the music. It's the improvisation, the freedom to create in the moment. It's the ancestral drums, the stories told through rhythm. But more than that, it's about connection. Latin jazz is the sound of cultures talking to each other. It's African traditions surviving through music. It's the immigrant experience, the blending of roots and new beginnings. It's joy, resistance, memory, and identity, all in one rhythm. So next time you hear the rumble of congas under a jazz solo, or the swing of a saxophone on top of a samba groove, you're hearing a story that spans continents and generations. You're hearing Latin jazz, not just music, but history in motion.